Welcome to Unlearning with me, Songezo, where each week we discuss a social issue through the lens of a book or a couple of books I've read that week. This week we're filming from Exclusive Books Hyde Park, and both of the books that I've read are available at the store. This week I've read two books. Manifesto by Songezo Zibi, which is a call to action that he writes directed particularly towards the middle class, who he describes as politically apathetic and need to participate within democratic processes more if we are to look for change in this country. The second book is The New Apartheid by Sizwe Mpofu Walsch, which talks about how it is that the vestiges of the old apartheid system, which was under the state, now have re-immersed and have exhibited themselves in the private sector, and therefore still exist. So initially I had a different idea of how it is that I was going to speak about these books. But then last week, while I was walking through Sandton City in the evening, I was a victim to crime. I was mugged. They took my phone and a bit of cash, and I got a little wound, nothing serious. But it got me thinking about the nature of crime in this country. Obviously, because of the high levels of crime in this country, it is almost inevitable that at some point, wherever it is that I am, I would fall victim to crime. There is nothing that you can do to be vigilant enough in this country to avoid being victim of a crime. It can happen while you're sitting at your home, while you're at a restaurant, such as it happened in Cape Town to Musi Maimane, or like myself, while you're walking in Sandton CBD, what is considered a relatively safe space. Sizwe Mpofu Walsch, in his book, The New Apartheid, speaks about how it is that vestiges of apartheid exhibit themselves within the private sector now. And one of those ways is through private security. What struck me most about my incident, or my mugging, was that right nearby, there was an estate that was being patrolled by private security and their vehicles. And near there was an office park where there were security guards who were guarding the complex. And when I went to them to ask for assistance, they told me that they could do absolutely nothing because all they were hired to do was protect their particular area. The security guards who were patrolling via vehicle within the estate, and they were meant only to guard the houses within the estate, and those in the complex told me that all they could do was guard the particular office complex they were a part of. And this is what Sizwe Mpofu Walsch speaks of. In essence, that private security that exists in this country may give you a false sense of security, but what they're there to do is protect a particular kind of people, which is primarily property owners and those who are wealthy. So because I wasn't a member of the community that was being guarded, or a person who worked in the office park, it was just left for me to be a victim to crime, and it wasn't their responsibility. And there is a false sense of safety that exists when you're walking around the Sandton area, because you witness so many guards and security carrying weapons, and you think that it's a place where you can walk safely and you'll be protected. But private security is not there, as I've experienced, to protect people. What they're there to do is protect property. And this is an unfortunate state that exists within our country. Of course, this is a very privileged position I'm speaking of, because whatever crime that exists and I experienced within the Sandton area is far more pervasive within township and rural and more poorer areas in the country. And it's exhibited particularly within Joburg CBD as well, where there isn't a high amount of private security. This then leads us to our second book, Manifesto, by Songezo Zibi, who calls to action, particularly the middle class, to participate more in the political realm in order to deal with such things as crime and other issues that affect all of us. So there are two things that Songezo Zibi does well in his book, Manifesto. On the one end, he paints a picture of the current political and governance landscape, which is the high levels of malfeasance that exist within our government structure, rendering governance so poor that there have been so many service delivery protests when service delivery should be a basic function of our government, and also the high levels of corruption. And he paints why it is that such things exist, particularly as a consequence of the way that the ANC governs and its policy of cadre deployment. On the other end, what he then does is to try and give us an idea of the future that he envisions for South Africa and how it is to fix these problems that he describes in the early parts of the book. Now, both of these are done quite well. The essence of his book, however, is to try and inspire within the middle class, which he accuses of having a high level of apathy, particularly in comparison with the poor. Because what you see, as he describes, is that the poor are able to come out and protest for issues such as service delivery and other issues, and are highly politically involved. Whereas in the middle class, people have seemed to have given up and no longer participate politically, other than to vote every 5 years. Now, my one critique of that is, while it is true that there is a level of political apathy when it comes to activism within the middle class, the reasons underlying that are that there are few options that exist in this country for people to vote for and to tether themselves towards in order to build a future that we all would like for this country. So while it may be true that so many of us don't participate politically, I say us collectively because we're all complicit whether or not we participate politically or not. What is important is that we see a future for our country where people put their hands up in order to show and paint a vision for a country that inspires politics in this country in a way that all are able to participate in. And this is what Songezo Zibi tries to do in his book. While there are many criticisms that you can level against him, what is important is that through his book Manifesto, he is raising his hand up to be one of those who will be willing to help build an infrastructure and an alternative to the kind of governance we see that exists in this country today. So, read together, both these books present a holistic understanding or an outlook of South Africa and its political landscape. On the one end, Sizwe Walsch's book uses his description of the new apartheid to paint a picture of how it is that the systems that existed under the apartheid state have now reimagined themselves and have inculcated themselves within South Africa's normal life through the private sector, through private security, as exhibited by my experience by being a victim of a mugging, and in other ways throughout the country. And what this does, as described in his book, is also present a country which is particularly multi-tiered, one where those who can afford private security and other ways to protect themselves can live more freely than those who have to rely on the state, which is policing. And on the other end, Songezo Zibi writes a book which tries to present not only a picture of the political landscape that we live in, but also his vision of how it is that we can fix things, and also a type of country that we can envision for ourselves. He does this particularly well by also discussing how it is that we can have electoral reform as a way to try and fix how it is that South Africans participate more directly within our democracy. I would encourage you to read both books, and also don't forget to try and comment in our comment section and give us an idea of what it is that you think about these particular books and how it is that they describe our political landscape. Also, let us know if you are one of those who do participate actively within our democracy, either through political means or even through other civil society organizations. Thank you very much, and catch us again next week.